All right, all right. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Travi Wavi, episode 21, believe it or not. We are coming to you live in the 325 once again from the Neon Parrot Live Studios, connected to Majestic Coffee Shop. Producer Sam has got the coffee shop closed down today to fine-tune some things, got the coffee maker all repaired yesterday. And we're just excited to be back here again in beautiful, historic downtown Abilene, where all the characters come to create. And we're going to have another wonderful guest today, Tommy Bowden. We're really excited to have Tommy on. I got to meet you, Tom, through coffee up here.
That's correct.
You've just been a wonderful customer patron of the shop, and come to find out that you have an incredible story. You've done a lot of things. You've met a lot of people. But the first question I have for you, sir, is the question I like to ask my guests is, do you have any siblings?
Siblings, I have a brother and a sister, but they're both dead.
Oh, they've already gone on.
Yes,
Where are you? And are you the youngest, oldest?
I'm the middle.
You're the middle. You're the middle. And do they have children also?
Yes, they have. Yes, there's about my sister had twins.
Okay.
We're good friends still. In fact, I try to take care of them. They're young. They're 51.
I like that. They're young. They're 51. That's good. So good. So you stay in touch with the nieces and nephews and.
Yes, our family, like a lot of old families, on my father's side, we had get-togethers up probably until about 1970. On my mother's side, we are still having them. We have our 75th reunion this year in Glenrose.
Wow.
There will be about 70 people there. So
that's great.
And we switch between families as to who takes care of it and everything.
I like that. That's really cool.
It's great. It's been. I'm trying to get my daughters and everybody to carry the legend on.
I hope they do. That's really great. So you before the show we talked a little bit about some of your roots in Texas and that you were raised in Brownwood.
Bangs.
In Bangs.
I didn't like that big city.
But you have some historical roots there, and also going further back. Can you share some of that with us?
Yes, I have ancestors that came from England to Massachusetts in the 1700s.
Okay.
In fact, one of them was mayor of Boston.
Wow.
Another one wrote a book for the Presbyterian Church in 1801.
Wow.
That was kind of considered the Bible, I guess. And then another family, part of that, there was large families back in those days. So my direct descendant moved to North Carolina and was in the Revolutionary War.
Oh, wow.
I've been to he died in Tennessee in 1821, I believe it was, and the census that shows him being there was signed by Davy Crockett.
Wow.
So there's all kinds of interesting things.
That's great.
And on my mother's side, the Norris family also came from England, but they came into Georgia first, and then eventually came here in Texas. My grandfather and his siblings and his father moved from Arkansas to Mahia in, I guess it was 1888, something like that. My great-grandfather's brother founded the Methodist churches as a stake minister in Santa Ana, Trickham, Bangs. And in fact, he was head of Bangs Church in 1901.
Wow.
He convinced my grandfather and his siblings to move from Mahia to Brown County. I always wished they had gone about 50 miles further to get some good dirt. But there were 10 families that moved there.
Wow.
It turned out that every brother, wife also family came. And my grandmother, her family came, and they had about 10 people. There was, like I say, 10 families that moved in 1903
Wow.
to Brown County and Coleman County.
So when they made this move, would that have been like horse and wagon, or was this on train?
Yeah,
It
it
was
had been
kind of
horse
right
and
around.
wagon.
Yeah.
In fact, they all of them were farmers, and they all acquired land. My great-grandfather came to Brownwood in 1901 to see his son and great-great-grandfather, and fell off the train. When he got off the train, broke his leg.
Oh no.
He went to Mahia to die, so he's buried in Mahia.
Oh wow. Wow.
But they all settled between Santa Ana and Trickham in a place called Crossroads.
Okay.
My great-grandfather had a country store there. And my grandfather and my grandmother's family settled in a place called Concord, which is right outside of Bangs, 6 miles. And that's where my father bought my father's farm in 1942, and that's when I moved to Concord. Lived in a country 3-room house. 1946, we got our electricity.
Wow.
In 1952, we got a black and white TV. My grandfather was deputy sheriff of Brown County from 1912 to 1932. So when he lived on the farm, he had got the telephone. So we had a telephone forever, I guess. There, in fact, it was the only one in that area for a while. Everybody came there to use it. So it was on a party line, so anybody between our house and Bangs could listen to what was going on.
Oh, that's crazy.
No, it was fun growing up then.
That's cool. So, what was school like? Elementary school.
It was a 3-room building, large rooms. In one room was grades 1 to 4, and the other room was 5 to 8. The third room was cafeteria, and every day seemed like we had fried chicken and red beans. There was Mr. and Miss Cobb were our teachers. Miss Cobb taught the lower grade, and Mr. Cobb taught the other one. I was the only one in my class for 2 years, and there was a total of, I think, 22 of us there in our last years. But in that school, you kind of took classes as to what you could do. When I was in the 4th grade, I took 8th grade math. Then our state decided that they should consolidate a lot of schools, so we went to the Bang School, and I went there, and I was sitting in class, already had all the courses, so I helped everybody else, I guess. But in fact, in that year, in 1949, is when the state consolidated. And in the instance of Bangs, there was, I think, 4 schools that consolidated, all small schools that had a country store associated with them, and 2 churches and that kind of thing.
You've talked about that before, the correlation between the school and the country store and how important that was.
Yes, the country store was a half a mile from my house, and the school was also there. The next town was 6 miles away, which was Bangs. Normally, back when it first started, people were traveling by horse and buggy. They didn't want to travel 6 miles, so they'd go to the country store, and the country store had a little bit of everything. You could get gas there when you got cars. And so when the school closed down, the country store closed down. The only thing there today is one church, a Baptist church.
That's interesting how consolidation, even looking at this example, consolidation killed the mom and pop. It killed the country store, the general school. I mean, And then we can fast forward to today where we have big box stores everywhere. That same, it's consolidation of what all the small mom and pop shops that were here just a few decades ago.
Yes, in the town of Bangs, for instance, there's a grocery store and a drugstore. I remember when there was 2 grocery stores and there was 3 drug stores and a hardware store.
Mm-hmm.
But the big boxes came in and destroyed a lot of small towns.
They really did.
Yeah.
So, what year was it when you graduated school?
1956.
1956. And then at what point did you decide to make the big move out west to California?
When I was at home, we had an upright radio, vacuum tubes and everything. If my mother and father wasn't there, I would tune the radio to Chicago or New Orleans and listen to jazz.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped listening to Western music. I didn't want to hear Western music. When I graduated from high school, first of all, I'd carried a slide rule. I don't know if you know what a slide rule is. My entire life from about the 5th grade on. It was what you used in place of a adding machine or whatever, calculating machine. I decided I wanted to be an engineer, and I had to have some assistance. So I looked for colleges that had co-op programs where you go to school 4 months, then you work for 4 months.
Okay.
SMU had it, but I thought they were too snobbish for me. So I went to Northrop Aviation Institute in Inglewood, California, which was founded by John Northrop. My cousin was the chief draftsman for John Northrop. And they were the designers of what they called the flying wing, which is the forerunner of these new bombers are all flying wings.
Interesting.
So I went out there and started school. Unfortunately, they promised me a job. I finished my first semester and they couldn't find me a job because at that time the defense industry was not that big. So I went to work for Northrop for about 4 or 5 months, then I transferred to SMU.
And transferred to SMU. So that was kind of your extent in California initially wasn't very long.
Yes, yes, that was it was a fun time though. Go to the beach.
Meet interesting people.
And at that time, it was not so crowded. So I enjoyed it.
That's interesting. So you graduated from SMU with a degree in engineering?
Yes, but I went from SMU to co-op at Martin Marietta in Florida every 4 months, and I was able to determine that I was not necessarily the right person to be an engineer. I remember sitting there and designing this a 1.5 by 1.5 by 1 module that had tolerances of -0 plus 5/10,000ths and had all these resistors and everything in it. And I thought, what am I doing this kind of crap for? Sitting at a drafting table. So I decided that I would not be an engineer.
And what did you decide to become?
Well, I kind of wandered around a little bit, and my father-in-law at the time had started a small business in the microfilm area, microfilm and records. So he convinced me to take over that company. And unfortunately, his health deteriorated. He couldn't do the selling part, so I decided to become a salesman. And I did that, and the business got so large that I had to have additional money. So I went to my banker, and my banker said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll introduce you to Samuel Bush, who was one of the founders of 3M. He lived there in Winter Park. Samuel Bush said, well, I'll give you $300,000, but I want 51% of the company until you pay me back. I thought, I don't want to do that. I'd met some people in Washington, D.C. that were interested in me, and so I sold the company to them, moved to Washington, D.C. But I say when I was at Martin Marietta, there was two things that I really enjoyed. One was that I was a specialist in heat transfer.
Okay.
So I had to write a 32 simultaneous equation to solve some problems. And we had to use an analog computer. We didn't have the big 360s. That was a good project. But a little bit later, I was assigned to which required crypto clearance, a committee to to present a proposal to the Army to allow the Pershing missile to carry chemical and biological weapons. They put me in a room, gave me a book with 750 items in it, all of it showing the environmental things that had to be done. So I was the environmental part of that. I went to the Huntsville with the presentation team, and that's what really decided me that I would not be an engineer. I did not want to be involved with that kind of operation.
Yeah.
And I could not say those words until 1990
Wow.
because of my crypto clearance.
Wow. So you were faced with an opportunity to use your gifts and talents to design something for destruction, and
Right.
it just didn't set well with
And
you.
it is something that I have been involved with a long time, even looking forward to the dumping of chemical weapons after World War II. And that's something I'm still working on.
What's that project like, or is that something you can talk about?
Well, we had through some connections, I received a Russian document about the dumping of weapons in the Bering Sea. And we convinced Canal Plus to fund an operation to go there and actually do a television series on it. They unfortunately picked a Russian partner, and I was all set to go down in a mini sub to see
wow.
this stuff. But the Russian partner took the money and ran.
They didn't care.
I have all the documents on this, incidentally. They're all going to North Texas University.
That's pretty wild. So at what point in your career, because you've mentioned this to me before, at what point did you take the bicycle trip?
That was after I had, I guess you'd call it retired.
Okay.
I started riding a bicycle in I guess it was 1975
Okay.
in California.
Okay.
And we would ride every weekend. Then I got involved. I'd always been in the jazz world, and I decided I wanted to do a bike trip from Chicago to Los Angeles
Wow.
and have with me a group that played jazz.
Okay.
And I got a beautiful guy out of Dallas, Eddie McMarvelous. That's his stage name. But we found out we couldn't ride Route 66 because it's all piecemeal, you know.
Oh yeah.
So I had to abandon that project. But I always wanted to do a long trip. So I decided, well, I'm sitting here in Banks now on my farm. I'm riding a bicycle every day. If I didn't have a car at the farm, I didn't even. So I bought a recumbent bike and decided in 2010 to take a trip. I had a trailer on it, and I rode from Bangs to St. Louis, then down the Mississippi River.
That's so cool.
2,500 miles in 6 weeks.
And that wasn't that long ago.
And I camped every night. I camped out.
I love that.
I just find a place to camp out.
And then just do it.
Well,
How old were you when you did that trip?
I think I was 70 something. I don't know.
That's great, Tom. What a cool adventure. How long did that trip take?
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
I raised $100,000 for a Farrah faucet. I was interested. I first of all, I had met Farrah before, And when she died of cancer,
Mm.
my daughter was at Harvard at the time, and I tried to talk to old Superman's brother, who he had a nonprofit that's doing research. I asked him if he would, if I could ride for him.
Mm.
And he knew at the time I was part of Conspiracy Museum. He says, I don't think I wanted you to do that with that name.
Mm.
And I says, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So then when I decided to do it, I contacted the Farrah Fawcett Foundation, and we collected $100,000 for them.
That's great. For cancer research?
Yes, for cancer research.
That's really great. You have a lot of connections. I mean, you've given me a whole pages and pages of names of people that you've had contact with. How did you get into that sphere of meeting some of these? I mean, we got famous actors, politicians, mob people, the whole nine yards. So how did you kind of start making those connections?
Well, it was kind of by accident for a while, but I met a lady when I was in school. We became good friends, and she took me. I went to the opening of Elvis Presley's "Love Me Tender" with her. We went to a party at John Wayne's house. I've known her, I knew her, and she died recently, for all those years, and she would introduce me to people. But then I traveled nationwide and internationally for almost 20 years, and I was traveling 100,000 miles, 1,000,000 miles a year on air.
Wow.
I was riding first class and business class. You meet all kinds of people.
Mm.
The first one I remember meeting was Louis Nye, who was a comedian.
Mm.
Then I met Tennessee Ernie Ford, and he lived fairly close to me. I lived in California at the time, and so we'd meet after that. We'd meet every other Sunday and have beer.
I love that. So just network, just connections.
Yeah, it was just that, and then because I had been working on the John Wilkes Booth mummy story forever, seemed like, I was with a group out of Swanee University that was researching it. So I was one of the consultants to an Unsolved Mysteries thing in 1976 on the mummy. And then when I became involved with the Conspiracy Museum, all kinds of opportunities came up.
Mm.
I met Robert Altman, the director, through my friend in California in 1995. And he seemed rather interesting. I couldn't understand why he was interested in me. He said, "Do you know Ann Rapp?" I said, "No." Well, she wrote my movie in 1992, which got an Oscar. She got an Oscar for it. And we're working on a new movie. We're going to come see you one of these days. So 3 years later, they came to see me, and we did Dr. T and the Women.
Wow.
And in Dallas, and one of the main stars worked for the museum in the movie. And I got to say hello, and I got a non-speaking part. My daughter was a featured extra.
Nice.
And he offered her a job after that, and I told her, I said, she's still in high school. I said, you don't want to do that. So she didn't do it.
So you've mentioned the Conspiracy Museum. We're talking about the JFK Conspiracy Museum in Dallas, correct?
It was called the Conspiracy Museum, but we covered all of the assassinations of the 60s.
All of them?
All of them.
Okay. So JFK, Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy.
Robert Kennedy. My co-founder of that was Robert Cutler. He was an architect. His father had made money in the fertilizer business, and when Texas City blew up in the 40s, he ended up being the architect at Texas City.
Wow.
Which is kind of odd because Texas City was started by a fertilizer ship. I decided not to concentrate on John Kennedy. I concentrated on Robert Kennedy.
Okay.
And I still do work on that.
And how did you get involved with that? I mean, was that
Uh, Cutler Cutler came to see. I did for 3 years. I did special events for museums.
okay?
I did two at the Kimball Museum, and one was Eamon Hotep, and the other was the Green Foundation. And also, I did the Catherine Great exhibit in Dallas. Cutler had heard about it, and he wanted me to. He was giving some money to a local operation that was actually the one that was used to do the JFK movie. He wanted me to go in and audit them. So I went in and audited them, showed where they were misusing their funds. He had already signed a contract for them to expand. And so I went back doing other stuff. He called me and he said, "Look, I've got this contract. I've got that building. I still want to do the museum. I want you to join me." So I joined him in 1994
Wow. And how long did you?
till 2007.
Wow.
Along the way, we did. In fact, I hate to mention the word here, but Billy Saul Estes. I, in conjunction with William Ramon of France, we wrote his life story. He had a lot of things he said which was incorrect, but it was enough to make the book a success in France, Japan, Estonia. In fact, it was a top-selling book in France. We also did a documentary about him. I wrote what became his autobiography that he put out, but he changed everything in it.
You just have such an incredible story, Tom. I feel like you've just dabbled in every single area of life.
I tell you what, I have never wanted to be in something that kept on every day. I deliberately would stop at a certain point. Every business I was in,
I feel like
except the museum.
except the museum. And is that still in operation?
No, we closed it 2007. They tried to raise their rent and everything, and it just wasn't worth it. We were losing money.
And so currently today, we'll go back to some of these other things, but currently today, how do you spend your time? What do you find yourself doing besides sitting up here with me talking today?
Well, I got to come here for coffee.
Yeah, got to
times
come
a
get some
day.
coffee.
And he won't give me a free cup either.
Man,
I tell you,
come on, Sam, producer
is
Sam.
terrible. I should have a frequent flyer club, right?
You do. You do need a frequent flyer card for in here.
We are still trying to get Sirhan out of prison. He did not kill Bobby Kennedy. Bobby, the current Bobby Kennedy, who's now and I are good friends. We have been working to get him out of prison. In fact, the parole board agreed to parole him, and then the governor didn't approve it. We'll be back in there again. Every time he comes up. There's a lot of stuff about the Robert Kennedy assassination that involved brainwashing. A lot of theories that I do not believe to be true. I met a guy when I was in college that was an ex-Carney hypnotist. And I spent a lot of time with him, and that got me interested in brainwashing and everything. I have a lot of documents on brainwashing, including the CIA's assessment of Soviet using it, published in 1971. I do not believe he was brainwashed. I believe he went there to kill him. He didn't. He didn't kill him, incidentally. There was another guy with another gun there. But I want him to get out so I can go talk to him direct. I met him in prison already. I want him out of prison so I can sit there and talk about him.
Yeah.
And talk to him out, and I believe to get the truth on it.
Well, bring him here. We'll put him on the podcast. You guys can do your own show.
Yeah,
Get it on the record.
That'd be fun.
It's intriguing to me because we've sat and chatted just a little bit over the weeks prepping for this, but you know, like in a way, it's almost like you're an octopus. You've got a tentacle over here, another one over there. They're just in all sorts of directions.
Yeah, I worked hard until 1990 trying to make a dollar,
Mm,
and I did it, I think, fairly good. I decided at that time that I did not want to be the prison of dollars.
mm.
So that's when I stopped completely. That's when I did a radio show in Dallas, with live jazz. I mean, we
Oh,
actually
cool.
were live. Changed in the middle of it, recreating the jazz shows of the 50s and 60s. So that's when I kind of wandered around.
And just
I'm still wandering. I have a young lady with me that we've been together for 9 years. She's from China,
very cool.
and we moved here 2 years ago.
Why did you move to Abilene?
Well, we were going to move to June came from China. With population in their city was 51 million people.
Ooh,
We lived a half a mile from the closest neighbor, 6 miles from town.
mm.
And she said, "Well, maybe we should go someplace else." I said, "Well, we'll go to Corpus Christi, 'cause I want a beach house."
Oh yeah.
We went there, and I thought, "Nah, this is not it." Even though they had a good jazz, like Dick Harp, started a jazz series down there a long time ago. So I said, "I want a beach house." So we started looking. I came up to here and talked to a real estate guy. "I want a beach house. Find me a beach house. I don't care where it is." So I have one in the middle of Abilene with no lake, no water. But it's a beach house.
That's great. That's great. So just a couple years you've been here in Abilene?
Yes, that's right. I guess it may be 3 years now.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that.
And what keeps you occupied now? I know you're working on writing your own autobiography.
Well, I finished the autobiography. I have a lot of archives, including all the exhibits from the museum. I've already placed some stuff at North Texas University, and the rest of it will go there. So I have a lot of probably 15 three-ring notebooks with stuff I have been interested in. I'm having to write something at the front of each one of those so I can explain what it was. Included in that is the dumping chemical weapons, brainwashing. So I work on that. In fact, last week I had a question came up about something in the conspiracy business, so I've been discussing that on the internet. I'm a member of several groups on the internet, so I keep busy, and I'd love to find some solutions to some of the things that I've been working on. I had a conversation with Bobby before they selected him to be head of the HEW about we have to do something about all this money people collect to spend on running for office.
Mm-hmm.
My solution is that if you can't vote for somebody, you can't give money to them.
Mm.
That's the way it was initially.
Yeah.
But no, I keep busy.
Let's dig into the conspiracy thing a little bit. I grew up in the Midwest and had some older mentors that were really, you would consider them to be conspiracy theorists. And of course, this was 20 years ago. But so that subject's always one that I'm interested in, maybe not fascinated in, but definitely interested in. And it seems like, a little bit with this current administration, some more things have been coming out. CIA is releasing more documents. You mentioned brainwashing also. If you could unwrap and unpack conspiracy in general for our listening audience and maybe help us understand that it isn't all the way that we're told it is.
Well, for one thing, the movie JFK, for instance, was fake. A lot of it is just pure bull crap. That spawned a whole new industry of people interested in the assassinations. Unfortunately, it also expanded people writing books that were not true. I spent a lot of my time debunking conspiracy as opposed to, but the fact is that the government kept too much information for maybe not because they were involved in it, but because it affected somebody. And I think that and so you didn't get all the right answers. It's the same way on John Kennedy. There's too much been hidden, and so everybody gets upset about it. It creates guys like me, and hopefully there's going to be a big release. I'm not for sure that it'll contain anything. I'll tell you. I'll give you a good example. In the Lincoln assassination, the Secretary of War Stanton took control of Washington. When Booth shot Lincoln, they came in and immediately arrested everybody that was in the theater, everybody that worked at the theater. They hung 4 people, including Mary Surratt, for being part of the conspiracy. It's a very public thing. John Surratt, who was probably part of it, he escaped. He's the only one that went to trial, a civil trial, and he was not guilty. Whereas the 4 that were hung was a military trial. The Booth body was buried and then unburied, and then there's a whole question about whether that was Booth or not. And that's the reason why I've chased the Booth mummy for years.
And where do we think the Booth mummy is now?
The Booth mummy right now is in Silver Springs, Maryland. It is owned by a circus collector. He will not let us have DNA. We have DNA from the Booth heirs, known Booth heirs, at the Smithsonian, ready to compare it. He doesn't want to do it because it toured. It was a very popular mummy. It toured as John Wilkes Booth mummy for about 20 years, and then Jack the Ripper mummy for a year. I saw the mummy when I was a junior in high school. I wished I hadn't.
Oh, man. So that's like a conspiracy theory all in it to itself. I mean, that could easily be answered if you could get a DNA sample.
Yes.
But we're not going to release that information.
Right.
So that leaves questions.
But the thing about it is Secretary of War Stanton controlled everything, just like Hoover did with the FBI. And Hoover he was weird.
Hoover was weird.
Hoover was really weird. And he had his own private notes that has not been released. I get a good example when H.L. Hunt decided to tape Marilyn Monroe's phone to bug it. The guy that went there found 2 other bugs in it.
Already been bugged.
And it was assumed that one of them was the FBI and the other was John Kennedy.
Interesting. Man. So
no,
wild.
it's because the government doesn't tell the whole story for various reasons. If you don't want to, if you got a senator that may have done something wrong, but what really wasn't part of it, you don't want that out.
Yeah.
It doesn't come out. So it's too much secrecy involved. Too much secrecy.
Do you have any thoughts or hopes about the current administration and that some of this will shake out, that maybe we can get some more transparency in government, or is this just yet again another gaslighting situation? We're all being brainwashed to think good things are happening, and it's just another power grab.
Well, first of all, I agree with the way he's trying to cut down government. I disagree with the way he's doing it, but I think it needs to be done.
Sure.
And I believe that what's going to be released will be released, and it will be all the records that are currently there. But I don't think all the records are there.
No, I'm sure plenty have been destroyed already.
Yeah.
Right?
It was a CYA. Everybody. I mean, I'm not one of those that believe that LBJ was part of it, but a lot of people believe that just because he profited by so much.
You had a chance to meet him.
Yeah, I met him in 1948. He came to Bangs when he was going to become a senator.
That's pretty cool.
I shook his hand. Another thing that has deteriorated in the 50s, if you owned a newspaper, regardless of how small it was, you were important because you were the source of news for a lot of people. LBJ was smart, and he went around to all the newspaper guys, and he smoothed them. I've researched in the LBJ library. In fact, I've looked at some of the news people that he was smoozing. But when television came about, then that began to get rid of newspapers' use. So now the newspapers really are just not really material anymore.
No, I mean, we lost our news press right across the street was caught on fire and burned down and got taken down a couple years ago. And one of my old neighbors was a printer that worked for the press. And he always kind of had that inclination that the newspaper was going to die, and then watching it die. And, the dissemination of information is what we're really talking about, right? Like, is it true or not? But what information were we given to even ask the question, is it true or not? If we're not given enough information, we can't make a decision about that. And then, today, March 13th, happy birthday, Ben, March 13th, 2025. Here we are. Most of our information's coming off of the phone via social media, TikTok, something like that. I mean, that's where I get all my information from now.
I read 5 news reports a day, all of them from very liberal to very conservative. In between there, someplace you find the truth. But you've got to remember that whoever's telling you something is prejudiced about for some reason.
Absolutely.
And if you don't filter them out, you're not going to understand the news. And most people don't have time to do that.
Well, and do you wonder? I mean, you spent time with researching brainwashing. Do you think? Because I wonder this myself. Like, I consider myself a critical thinker, and yet I know that I'm missing big pieces of the picture. And so it's tough sometimes to actually come to a real conclusion that's based on some authenticity or truth.
That's correct. Plus, you have your own prejudice, too.
Absolutely. Yeah, my own biases, my own prejudices. Absolutely. Are there some skills you think that you could pass on for learning to become a better critical thinker?
I just think that you have to understand where you're getting your news and what their philosophy is. That's what you really have to look at.
It's like chess.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, excuse me. Again, I have this list that you sent with so many great names, and we've touched on a couple of them, but one of my favorite ones on this list, and I'd love to know the story, Sir Anthony Hopkins, one of my most favorite actors of all time. How did you get to meet him, know him?
Well, you remember, did you ever see the movie Bobby? I have done background to various movies. They'll say, we need to know this. Sir Anthony wanted someone to talk about the 60s. So I spent 2 weeks with him in his house, and we talked about the 60s.
I love that.
Incidentally, he has an AA meeting in his house once a week. I saw recently, I think he's now 40 years sober.
Wow. That's so cool. So when you guys sat down and talked about the '60s, what were some of the questions that he would ask you?
He just wanted to know, how. First of all, he wanted to know what I did, what my experiences were,
Mm,
the free love time and all that thing, and just what various people's reactions to current events.
mm,
And in Bobby's instance, he wanted to know about Bobby himself,
mm,
even though it wasn't about Bobby.
mm-hmm.
you So he just had this list of, we just had conversations.
I've been thinking. So you mentioned the '60s and all of this, and since you were there, I've been thinking recently about like culture, especially in our country, and how that period of time in the late '60s where music was a lot of people relate it back to like the psychedelic experience coming out of San Francisco with the
Mm-hmm.
Grateful Dead and Jimi Hendrix and all these things. But I mean, that movement was so powerful. And of course, I only know it from history, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, my parents were
Mm-hmm.
alive, but they weren't. I mean, my dad went to Woodstock, but he said to his friends, "Take me home because this is too loud and too muddy." So he wasn't having a good time. But just this, like, there was this huge cultural awakening, and people's perceptions changed drastically during that time. And then it does seem like there was sort of a squelling of that, maybe by Nixon, just kind of put some of that fire down. And then maybe now we're kind of revisiting again a cultural shift, a renaissance, so to speak. I mean, I think critical thinking is coming back, but I don't know. I'd love for you to speak on this because to me, it's a mystery of how we went as Americans and we went towards this free love, empowered, people matter, everybody matters, down with corporate greed, down with the man, and yet here we are 50 years later and we're just more entrenched than ever.
I think one of the things that started it was World War II,
Mm,
because for the first time there was not a male in the house, and the wife had to do those things,
mm,
uh, and the wife had to go to work. So they became more aware and more aggressive, I guess you might say.
mm,
Not because they were not aggressive, but because they just were subservient, more or less.
mm,
And I think that began a lot of what happened in the '60s. Certainly, in the '60s, I began. Let's see, in 1966, I opened 18 offices in 18 months across the United States, and I staffed them with a minimum of 3 people. So I was hiring people in I had 2 offices in California, or 3 offices in California, and one in New York. So I was in San Francisco an awful lot, and I saw what to me was amazed. I was amazed by it, to tell
mm,
you the truth. You walk down Broadway and see all the. In fact, I'll tell you, this is a crazy thing. There was a place on Broadway down in a basement. It said free sex, free live, not free, live sex acts.
mm,
So I had to see what's going on down there. They had little cubicles, and you could pick what sex act you wanted to watch, put $5 in the thing, and they'd do it.
mm.
Now, I'm still amazed by that. But no, first of all, when I was in D.C., I worked with both government agencies and pharmaceutical companies. LSD, I was in Sandoz Pharmaceutical the day FDA did not approve LSD.
Mm.
It was being used in Europe to treat mental illness, and it was successful.
Mm.
But LSD was so free to get And I think when you had the Korean War, then you had the Vietnam War. You again had people not having a complete household, and I think that led to it. I think that not having a father and a mother in a family made a lot of children not go the right way.
Well, and if in today's day and age, we've got a divorce rate of over 50%. So it's and constant wars going on, but it's the same kind of idea where, you know, even if your children are lucky enough to have access to both parents, it's not necessarily going to be at the same time.
Yes, that's correct.
And
And
this
I
is
have
kind of you continue to think that this is the down like a I don't say downfall of society, but a wound that we're suffering from.
I'm a trophy of that kind of thing. I have been married and I have been divorced 3 times. I have family by 3 different people. And I was traveling continuously. So my children didn't necessarily have the right thing, and certainly affected the first 2. The only child I ever spent my entire time was with my daughter, who's now, 40 years old. But and I regret that. In fact, my book is called Confessions of a Conspiracy Nut, but it is a true confession of why I made certain decisions along the way, which harmed my children, that kind of thing. So I don't see it as it's not really a conspiracy book. It really is a confession book.
When do you think you'll have it published?
It'll be. I'm currently negotiating with North Texas, and it will probably go there. If not, then I'll self-publish it in the fall.
So within the year, maybe.
Yes, it'll be this year.
I look forward to reading
Yeah,
that.
I've been writing it for 10 years, so it better be.
It better be good.
I tell you, I wrote a lot better 5 years ago. I go back and read something like that's good. Then I look, that's not good.
We're our own worst critics, aren't we? Always. So you've been in Abilene for a couple of years, and does your wife work, or does she?
She teaches Mandarin
Okay,
over the internet.
very cool.
She's had she goes to China 3 months out of the year and actually teaches there.
Nice.
She taught in China taught English and Chinese culture in China.
Cool.
We met in New York after she had already come over here. So yeah, she works hard.
Did you get to go with her to China?
I don't go to China because it's a 17-hour flight, and I don't want to fly.
You've flown enough.
When I have flown, it's like being in a cattle car.
Yes, it's the Greyhound bus in the sky.
I have committed to fly to Germany to see my daughter this fall,
Cool.
and then go to China from there with her.
That's better.
So I'm going this year.
Good. Good. And do you guys enjoy being in Abilene?
Yeah, and I'm hesitant because I love jazz. I miss jazz. I've seen jazz all over the world. I have friends all over the world in jazz, and I miss jazz. And to me, Abilene is not multicultural.
No.
I wish they were.
I would say we have some culture, but just enough, just barely enough, where you're really left wanting more.
Yeah, I've been debating really right now whether I want to spend the rest of my time here. And if I found the right place, but the right place is not a big city.
Yeah.
It's by the ocean.
Yeah. Port
So I don't
Aransas
know.
is nice down there by Corpus. I like Port. I like
Yeah,
Port
I
A.
used to. There's Sunset Beach is. I used to have a house down there when I was living in Houston, and it was a great place to go and relax. We spent every summer there, and it was a great time. I love South Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
When I left Western Union, I took 6 months off, and we traveled from just made the loop.
Mm, I love that. So you're a beach bum too.
Yeah, I love it.
That's good.
I've even done the New Year's Eve freeze jump in the water.
That's so cool. Well, as we start to wrap up our program a little bit, if so, besides more jazz in Abilene, and maybe we can help you with that. We'll work on that, right, Sam? Right, Katie? Yeah. What other things would you like to see? I mean, if I could move the ocean closer, I would. But what else could we do to keep Abilene a great place for you to want to hang out in?
Well, it would be great if downtown was be revitalized.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed there's more art places down here than you can buy coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's all right. I've done art shows.
Mm-hmm.
I produced art shows for a while, so there's some good art here.
There is some good art.
And the thing out here by United, the People's Plaza.
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's good.
Mm-hmm.
I just miss going and sitting down with artists. To
Yeah.
tell you the truth,
Yeah.
when I lived in Dallas, I'd go down to Deep Ellum and Shaka Susie Hobash was a good friend of mine, and she had an art gallery, and we produced several different art shows.
That's very cool.
So it was fun. It had a good beatnik place now.
I think Majestic Coffee Shop is probably the closest we're going to get to a beatnik house in Abilene.
Well, I was a beatnik, and I wrote poetry to doorknobs and everything else. When I went to SMU, my hair was down to my shoulders. I was the only person with long hair at SMU. I didn't blend into SMU. I went to beatnik houses. I met a lady there that we conversed as to whether black was the absence of color or because all the colors were there.
I think it's because all the colors are there.
Well, we had a long discussion about that in a beatnik house.
I can believe that. Well, you can make black by mixing blue cyan and burnt umber. So there's color.
Well, because at the time I happened to have my room, all black.
Mm-hmm.
So I invited her to come live in my black house, and she did. And that's when I met Candy Bar and Jack Ruby.
Oh yeah, let's get into that real quick towards the end here. Tell me how you got to hobnob with the mafia.
Well, I met Candy, or Juanita Slusher was her real name, was falsely convicted in Dallas with one marijuana cigarette. She was framed, convicted, and she appealed it. And while she was on appeal, my girlfriend at the time was doing her hair and working at Ruby's place. So she called us one night and wanted to go out the next day because she was about to go to Los Angeles to leave Dallas because she could not work in Texas anymore. So we went out, and her date was a guy that, if you believe some people say, he's killed probably 60 people. He was Benny Binion's kind of go-to guy. When Benny Binion moved from Dallas to Las Vegas, he took $2 million in cash with him. This guy rode shotgun with the cash in the car. So, and my brother happened to have met him after that, so that became part of it. But probably I really got to meet Joe Bonanno, who was the father of the mafia crowd. He had retired to Arizona. My neighbor, Joe Anello, they changed the name to Allen, had a great restaurant with a big wine cellar in it. That all of most of the computer companies actually would rent that wine cellar to have to do their business plans in.
Mm-hmm.
He was also the business manager for the first baseman for the Yankees, Joe DiMaggio. And Joe DiMaggio would come out and sit in my hot tub because we were neighbors and everything. My neighbor called me one day. He knew that I had done. I did some very large work with banks in the 70s. I understood how the back side of the bank is more important to the bank than the front side because that's where most of the money goes through in and out. And he called me one day and said, let's get somebody who wants to talk to you. So I go over and he introduced me to Joe Bananas, and his son John is there. He wants to talk about money transfer out of banks. And I told him what was standard. It was not anything secret. And he told me, he said, if you ever need anything, call me. Well, and when I began to delve into the problems of Robert Kennedy assassination, I was approached and offered the gun that there was a guard in the same room that Robert Kennedy was shot. He pulled his gun and fired shots that night. That they could have access to that gun. There was another gun that was actually test fired in place of Sirhan, and in fact the serial number of that gun was written on the test sheet, not Sirhan's serial number. They approached me that they had those two items, and they were part of the mob in Los Angeles. I placed a call and asked them, gave them the three names. And he says, this one you can't trust. This one is the son of the guy in L.A., and he's good. So I completed the transaction for one gun. The second gun, I met with the guy that was only introduced to me as captain of the police force that had retired. I saw the gun. They had given me a price for it, and then they wanted to raise the price. So I told them I'm not going to pay that much. Then I finally decided to pay it, so I went back out there. And I have a letter from an attorney specifying that this gun is available and this is where it is. Well, I went there and it wasn't there. So I don't have that gun. I never did get that gun. I know it's still in existence, but it's not.
Out there somewhere.
It's out there, yeah. That's how I became with that. But the Dallas mob was a totally different story. I met everybody in Dallas, one way or the other.
Tom, we've got to have you back on the channel, man. We're gonna have to pick a couple more of these wonderful stories and dig into them because I could sit here and talk with you all day, I think, and we still wouldn't unpack it all.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about some of the conspiracy stuff someday. And Candy, I'd love to talk about Candy Bar.
Well, why don't
I've
you
known her, and
why don't you wrap us up with another little story about her today?
okay, she in fact she was pardoned. She went to prison in Huntsville. She was a star of the Huntsville Prison Rodeo. When John Connolly, incidentally, John Connolly's middle name is Bowden, pardoned her in the spring of '63. She got out and went down to Edna, where she was from. She had a daughter down there. Jack Ruby sent her a puppy. Took a puppy to her of his dog. And then she moved to Brownwood. And my friend with the 60 murders told me about it. He said, now you check on her when she go down there. So I'd go down there and I'd talk to her. In fact, I carried money to her one time from my friend. And in 1988, I accidentally saw this girl that we'd double dated with Candy. She was working out at the club there, and she had married an all man. She was rich and everything, but she had kept in touch with Candy. So she invited Candy to come up, and we actually had a reunion of that meeting in 1988.
That's fun. That's fun.
But the reason why Candy went to Brownwood, incidentally, is that first of all, her father was in the VA there, but the gangster friend told her that's a good town because he and Jack Ruby had used the airport there to transport guns and everything to Central America. In 1972, when the CIA admitted Air America was part of its operation, they also outed the airport in Brownwood. And it happened for about 6-7 years there.
That's wild.
I went back to Brownwood incidentally. I wanted to check that out, and there was just no paper trail of the guy ever being there.
No. Yeah. Just like we were saying, the search for the truth, but if the information's already missing.
Yeah.
Well, will you come back on the channel and
Sure,
talk some more?
glad to.
Okay, we'll get you back on here maybe in a few months, and we'll do some more. This has been really good. Tom, you're a true character, and I'm glad that you've loaned your time and energy and that you're here in Abilene, at least currently, making our storybook capital of America more awesome.
Well, I can tell you that my memory is beginning to get glitches.
I'm sure. I'm sure
And,
we all. I can't imagine.
I'm having a hard time accepting the fact that I'm old.
Well, yeah, I get that too. I think that's the inevitability of it all. Well, if you guys have enjoyed this show today, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment. If you want to come down next week, Thursday morning, we'll be doing some more live podcasts right here from the Neon Parrot Live Studios. Thank you to our producer extraordinaire, Sam Wolf. Another quick happy birthday shout out to Ben. Breakdown with Ben. Hope you're having fun this weekend, buddy. Tom, thank you so much.
Glad to.
Super pleasure. Very honored to have you on, and we will get you back on.
I enjoyed it.
Good. All right, Sam, take us out. We'll see you guys next week. Have a good one.